All right, so here are all the features we implemented in the past couple of months. Now, I'm not going to show you the speed improvements you might have noticed in the back end, front end, and on your published web projects. I'm also not going to go deeper into the form settings you have now. You have a lot of more advanced options here. And also, you might have noticed that when working with dynamic pages, you can now nest and link more data. I'll have separate videos for that. I'm also not going to talk about this little feature we have here. I guess I already did. Now, when you go into Flex, you now have that gap property. But I'm just going to go over the main things. Like, for example, if you have a URL now, your URL for your web project, this is my little goofy one-page site. And now if you type in after the URL yc-admin, YC, hit enter, you go straight into editor mode. And this is really good. You can hand this over to your clients or to your employees. They can work on the site, on the content without distractions over here. Now, of course, if they have permissions, they can still use the designer mode here to go back and work on the other parts of their site. But this is a really handy feature I really like. Now, let's go back to the project here. And another big thing that everyone has been waiting for were the animations, right? So now you can create things like parallax animations where some of the elements go faster, the other ones go slower during scrolling, for example. We have things like on page load, things pop up. You can now build that, scroll into view, like so. Things start showing up once someone is scrolling. And other things like this endless loop here or marquee animation. Now we also have more advanced hover effects now because of animations. Like in this case, we see the scaling. One part of the card is scaling out, the image is scaling in. So these are things where we implemented and are still working on adding things as we go. Other things, like, for example, when we have forms now, when someone clicks a button and we're in our workflows here, we can now add things like subscribing to a newsletter. You can choose the provider, the API key, group, name, and email. We can also do other things. For example, let's say this is not a subscription form, but this is a contact form, in which case we can send an email. So when someone puts in their data, hits that button, they're not going to be subscribed, but the data is going to go to the database, of course. They're going to get a message, etc., etc. And then we are going to get an email. For example, if we click send an email, we choose our email here, custom, put in our email, the subject line, for example, contact form, all these other things, and then we click edit content and we can add dynamic data. For example, the name of the person, the same data that will go to the database, we can have that data go to our email. For example, email address, save, and that should work. Another thing we implemented is that if you go to database now, let's just discard the changes, we have the possibility to sort. Just click on the title of the columns and we can sort this data now. Also, if we have reference fields or multi-reference fields like this one, once we edit or add a new item here, let's go ahead and click this, we have categories. Before, if you had a lot of different types of categories or a lot of data, you would have to find it. So you have to scroll through the data and find it. Now we have search, so it's much easier to work with that data. Just choose it and you're ready to go. Let's discard here and let's go to the canvas. Now we also added interactivity now. Here you go, interactivity. So for example, if you have blog posts, let's go to a blog post here. And now if you want it to be impossible for someone to copy this text with just their mouse, you can go ahead and go to interactivity and, for example, set selecting to none instead of auto. So now if we preview this, we try to copy this, we cannot do this. All right, let's go back. We can set it back to selecting, save. If we preview again, you'll see that now we can select this text. And there are other things you can do, of course. For example, play around with the cursor here. We have these options for the cursor, so we can change it depending on the hover state. And we also have the pointer events. We can disable them so we do not get any of these once we hover over a specific element. Of course, to do this, we need to turn on hovering, and then we can play around with that. All right, another thing is we can now add a player, an audio player. For example, let's go to our media here, audio, and we have this audio player. We can then, of course, upload audio and connect it to this player here in the settings. We can also just use a URL here for the player. Another thing we have, let's go back to the home page. Another thing we implemented in design is filters. So we can now choose an element and then, for example, blur it, change the brightness, the contrast, saturation, hue, grayscale, invert. We can add sepia, and we can do the same thing with the backdrop over here. And we can also use some of these filters in our animations. So with animations, the way they work is we click animation over here. We choose the trigger, for example, this image. We choose the trigger over here. It's connected with this image, so we can have click, hover, scroll into view while scrolling, loading, etc., etc. You will see movies, you will see videos coming out where I show you examples of animations and how to build them pretty soon. For now, like I said, this is just a quick overview, but let's go with hover. And now you can add the different properties. So you can move, scale, rotate, skew, whatever you want to do. And here are some of the new things we added, the filters, the blur, the brightness, or grayscale. For example, if we wanted to blur to, let's go with 30. Okay, so now if we hit preview, you can see all of the animations, plus now we have that blur effect. Now let's go back and let me show you one more thing, pre-built layouts. So now you can add navigation, sidebar, headers, heroes, features, lists, pricings, testimonials, footers. All you need to do is click one of these and they get added. And these are basically pre-built elements, and you can go ahead and start editing them right away. So that's it for the last couple of months. And like I said, these are just the main things. If you scroll down to the bottom of our main website and click release notes, you can see all the things that are constantly being added, improved, implemented, etc. All right, and that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I wish you a wonderful new year. I can't wait to share with you the things that are coming up in the next couple of months. See you soon.